Hello, class. It's Miss Roberts here, and today we're going to talk about speech delivery. Let's begin. All right, so let me go ahead and get started with our delivery slides. So when I think about delivery, I'm going to be making references to both in-person and online delivery. There are some similarities, but there are some differences as well. But first, let's talk about the power of speech delivery. We have our nonverbal signs and communication as well. So we have the social media of messages. We're making sure that our nonverbals match the appropriateness of the occasion and of the culture that we're speaking to. We can also use nonverbal communication to express feelings and emotions, especially with facial expressions. And it's very important to delivery. So make sure if it's a more solemn occasion, make sure your facial expressions and body language match that. Or if it's more happy-go-lucky, maybe on the neutral side, smile and be warm and welcoming. You don't do folded arms in speeches because that indicates being closed in, not being open. So openness, making sure you have gestures, but not too crazy with the gestures. It's all about balance. All right. So listeners expect effective delivery, especially in the age of video, curated content, and social media. So we expect an effective delivery. So we want to make sure that our nonverbals match the occasion or the tone of our speeches. It affects credibility. So people who are viewed as unprepared may be more unsure, might have lower volume in their speeches, might not make eye contact with the audience or the camera in this case. So just make sure to do that. It does vary based on culture, so we're thinking about the Western I well, not ideal, but the Russian standards. There you go, the Russian standards of communication in this case, but it might vary based on country and culture. And then we want to make sure that it's the basis of the conversation. All right. So let's just make emotional connections through delivery. So we are always scanning each other and our surroundings for emotional cues and making sure that we are matching the emotional tone of the occasion. So they're looking to you as the speaker, the leader, to lead the way in that way. So that phenomenon is called emotional contagion. If you've taken interpersonal communication, you would know this term where we're matching the tone of the speakers and speakers around us and emotions as well. But there might be difficult to fake as well. So just make sure to practice, try to be calm. And if you are a little bit jittery or nervous and your nonverbal show that, you can be forgiven for that, especially in academic context. But keep going, keep smiling, and you'll be all right. Next, we're going to talk about the methods of delivery. So here are some ways that speeches can be delivered. And in our class, we're going to focus on extemporaneous delivery, which combines the great elements of the previous three. One of those being manuscript speaking. So that's when you have your notes and you read off your notes. Oftentimes, politicians and newscasters have a teleprompter and read off of the teleprompter, but this is important for critical and sensitive issues where stats and facts are definitely important in being on point. But you're having to balance sounding natural when speaking from manuscript. So you won't ever hear a newscaster say, "Hello, it's February in SoCal and it's 70 degrees. I know people on the East Coast are jealous of us." Ha 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 ha. No, you will never see them do that. They'll be fired the next day. But you might hear them say, "Hey, SoCal, it's 70 degrees in February. Can you believe it? Of course, people on the East Coast are loving this weather." Or whatever, right? But it does sound more natural and more lively, even though they're reading the exact same content. But then you have memorized speaking. Now, memorized speaking is not my favorite either. But luckily in this class, you don't have to deliver. the speech right off the dome, or right off memory. So with that, because you're trying to focus on memorizing every word, it's often overly rehearsed, stiff, so delivery and flow does suffer. Sometimes you might forget some parts, and in this purely memorized speaking, you can't necessarily do on the spot dictations, but you got to work on it in a pinch. So with memorized speaking, you do know the content because you have to know the content, but sometimes you might forget things and it's not a good time. So luckily you are balancing. You do have to know your content to say your speech, but you can use notes for cues and you can focus on sounding conversational. Impromptu thinking, yes, a fan favorite. Maybe not so much, but it's more informal. I usually do more impromptu speaking with our discussions as well. I do have prepared discussion questions, but I don't 100% know what my students are going to say to me. So in that exchange, it's more impromptu. You can allow for direct eye contact because you're having a more like a conversation in a way, but because you're having a conversation, it's just a stream of consciousness type of situation. So you don't have a lot of organization and research. If possible, you can prepare a little bit, but with the following methods of delivery, you will have all that covered. With extemporaneous speaking, very long word, but in essence, it provides the best of all three worlds. You will have, you will be able to prepare in advance, so you have your notes and your speaking notes. So that's that manuscript element. You would have been able to rehearse the speech a bunch of times. So there's that memorization that happens, but you're able to sound more conversational. And if you do have a question that's impromptu, you know your information so well that you can engage in impromptu speaking or make adjustments when you need to. So it's more conversational. You can use online your notes, and if you, the more you say the exact same information, the less likely you're able or need to rely on notes. You can make revisions as well. As an instructor, oftentimes I'm teaching classes back to back, like the exact same class back to back. So my delivery varies slightly depending on which class I'm in, what time is it. The first class probably gets the more um, the more straightforward version. And then because I just said the information, I have to tweak it for the next class. We have students we have different questions. So even though it's the exact same material, I don't deliver it the exact same way every time because I'm able to adjust to my new set of students and my audience. All right, so let's talk about the body. So here's where we kind of differ a little bit for online versus in-person delivery styles. So you want to make sure to have eye contact. During the pandemic, this was my challenge because I didn't know where to put my eyes. I didn't know where to look. So I'll give you, so when I had switched to online public speaking, I definitely struggle with eye contact. In the classroom, totally not. So if you're in a classroom or in a setting where you're in person, you want to make sure to look forward and scan. Now, I can't do that with online because I can look forward, but I can't just be go scanning around. There's nowhere to scan to. But looking at the camera, looking in that direction helps me make eye contact with you in virtual land. So you want to make sure to have silence and begin the eye contact before speaking. So the gestures can be used to replace words like thumbs up means okay, no, I don't know, maybe. So those gestures can be used to emphasize or replace words. Also make sure to adapt to cultural expectations. Some gestures that are okay in our culture or American culture might not be okay in other cultures. So just be aware of that and make sure to use the gestures that are right for you and effectively. All right. So movement, so this is where we deviate from in-person versus online public speaking. So for example, this is my office. slash guest bedroom slash cat bedroom sanctuary. So I have to remember that. Usually when I'm on here, I'll just give you an example, I'm just like this and just typing and on the phone and doing all this stuff. Like just all over the place, right all over my desk. But when I'm talking to you in a lecture, I have to make sure to stand straight and look into the camera. I have to be mindful that yes, this is the room where I'm doing all that slouching most of the time, which is good for your back, by the way. But make sure to stand up straight and tall on mine. Now, also, I have my little light, and I have like a lot of natural light, but of course, you don't want to rely on natural light in this case. Had it been accents. Let's see. If I turn this light off, you can still see, but not as clearly. So you can get a ring light if you're doing online public speaking, or I just have like a simple lamp right here to just make sure that I'm well lit. Sometimes I listen to speeches and it's just in a dark room with the backlight of the laptop. Just it's very it can be awkward because you can't really see the person's face and it's just like this dark room and I'm like, no, we want to make sure to see you clearly. And then we also have the headset, making sure that we're able to hear you. That can be another challenge for online speaking. I'm cranking up my volume on my headphones and I'm like, ah. So you don't want to do that. So even though for online delivery, it's a little bit different, looking at the camera, making sure we have lighting, making sure we have sound, making sure that we're speaking loud enough into the microphone. Make sure you keep those in consideration. Also, when you're standing, whether it be on camera or in a classroom, make sure to stand up straight and tall. Make sure to look around. Make sure to not do the speech dance. Now, the speech dance doesn't happen as much in the chair, but there's the people who shift around. Oh, I can't do this in this chair. But then I also have people in my online class that kind of circle around. Oh, yeah, this is their speed version of speech dance, where they kind of shift around the chair and they don't notice them doing that because sometimes you're just in here, you just do what you normally do, but you don't want to do that. In the classroom, they're going back and forth, slide, slide, and they don't even notice that they're doing this, right? But just make sure that you're standing straight and sitting up straight in this context, standing up straight, smiling, and just having control of your movements. All right, make sure you have posture, especially in our culture, tall posture. This means you have command of the room and, in this context, command of the screen. Stand up straight, and you can just like, imagine that you're being, that you're a ballerina and that you're standing up tall and straight. Or back in the day, they'll have books and you have to keep the book in your head by standing up straight. You don't have to do all that in your speech, but just make sure to stand up straight and tall. You can use your facial expressions to express emotions effectively. Be mindful of any emotions conveyed because, of course, with emotional contagion, we're looking at those verbals and nonverbals to make sure we're matching what you do. And of course, consider cultural expectations and make sure those facial expressions are consistent with the tone of the message. Then we have vocal delivery, which of course is one of the most important aspects of delivery in this class. Not only do we have to write the content, put it all together, do the research, but now we got to say it. So, other than maybe English classes or writing classes, this is the next step. So, you want to make sure to have clear volume in the context of maybe a big auditorium or online, making sure that you have proper equipment and being able to speak loudly, articulate your words and your sounds, make sure that you're saying the sound exactly as it's supposed to be, that you're pronouncing the words the way it's supposed to be, articulating every syllable where it's supposed to be, and being mindful of dialect as well. So I'm from 3 different states. I lived half of my life in California, and I'm born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and I lived in Florida for a couple of years. So I have all those regions in my accent. And accents are fun. I love accents. Just as long as you're clear and we're able to understand you, you'll be fine. You also want to make sure to use pitch and inflection properly, not be necessarily monotone. If you have a naturally monotone voice, that's fine. But I like to say put a little bit of that variation in pitch and make that be your presenting voice. And then also incorporate speech rates. Make sure to speak with a moderate rate and use pauses and avoid vocalized pauses such as or Alright, so next we have personal appearance. So we want to make sure to dress slightly nicer or better than the audience. Avoid offensive or distracting elements, but just make sure that you're comfortable. I always like to emphasize comfortable shoes because you don't want to stand there and have your feet hurt and then it affects your gestures. You don't want that to happen. But audiences respond more positively to the messages when you dress nicely. And just a couple of guidelines for rehearsal. Make sure to finish your outline at least 2 days before the speech. And I say at least because the earlier the better, but at least you'll have time to absorb the information, rehearse out loud, and time your speech. Prepare your speaking notes and rehearse standing up or sitting up. Present to someone else, and you can make even if you're speaking in person, you can make a recording and kind of judge yourself in third person, use and practice with your presentation aids. You can try to recreate the speaking situation, maybe have a makeshift podium, have other people come in and watch you. Now that's a requirement for our speeches to have an audience, even if you're online. So make sure to keep along with that and just practice good delivery skills. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me, class. If you have any questions about either in-person or online presentations or any other questions at all, please let me know and I'll see you guys later. Alrighty, bye.